Long before the land of Amuzi tasted peace, the kingdom trembled under a story whispered only at night. A warrior whose strength was unmatched, a witch whose heart turned deadly, and a seer who saw what no one else dared to see. What happened between the warrior, the witch, and the seer will tear Amuzi apart and awaken something the land was never meant to face. This is the story they tried to bury, the story Amuzi still fears. Make sure to tighten your seat belts because this story will leave you on the edge of your seats. A long time ago, in the age when spirits and humans shared the same air, the kingdom of Amuzi was a place of music, magic, and harmony. Every night, moonlight danced on the rooftops, and the people lived without fear. Sorcery was common, but it was controlled until the day love offended the wrong woman. Her name was Nsioku, the head of the 7 witches of Amuzi. In the coven, the bond between the witches was so strong that a pain to one witch was a pain to all. Their hearts beat together, their anger rose together, and their shadows obeyed them like servants. But Nsioku had a weakness. She had fallen deeply, foolishly, and helplessly in love with Obidike, the bravest warrior in the kingdom, a man whose footsteps made drums throb and whose voice made maidens' knees tremble. But Obidike's heart belonged to Uli, a gentle maiden whose smile could calm angry spirits. When Obidike announced that he would marry Uli, Nsioku's heart cracked like dry firewood. Her pain shot through the coven, making the other witches clutch their chests and howl. The leader was hurting, and in the coven, hearts always demanded revenge. That night, the witches hovered over Obidike's compound. Their shadows danced like dark flames around them. Nsioku's eyes glowed red as she whispered,
"If I cannot have him, then let his joy be scattered like dust."
The witches stretched their hands toward the moon, their fingers twisted like branches in the storm. The air grew cold, their voices rose in a single terrifying chant. And then, with a final clap of thunder, a black wind raced into Obidike's home. By sunrise, Obidike's parents were dead, their faces frozen in horror, their bodies drained of life. The kingdom wailed, the land trembled, but Nsioku was far from done. Her pain still burned, especially after seeing Uli consoling Obidike, and as the coven felt every drop of it, so was another plan cooked. And so she called for another curse, one bold enough to disgrace the entire kingdom. As the witches stood in a circle, Nsioku raised her staff. The others touched it, forming a ring of crackling power. They chanted until the earth shook, and when the spell was ready, Nsioku threw a handful of white ashes into the sky. The ashes swirled into the air, drifted over the rooftops, slipped into the homes of every maiden, and waited. At dawn, Amuzi exploded with screams. Women wailed in their hearts, "Hey, where is my hair? Who rubbed my face with sorrow? I look like my husband's grandfather." Some fainted, others cried. Some blamed their husbands instantly, even though the poor men just woke up too. It was chaos. Maidens who once walked like queens now hid behind pots and wrappers, covering their shining bald heads that glistened like freshly washed calabashes. Yet, despite this despair, despite Ule's sudden baldness and the loss of her beauty, Obidike's love for her only grew stronger. And that act of loyalty and love pierced Nsioku deeply. The pain hit the entire coven. The screams pounding the ground. Then, Nsioku rose, shaking with fury.
"Since he's too stubborn, then let his strength fail him on the day he's needed most."
She stretched her hands toward the sky. The other witches mirrored her. Their shadows spun like a dark whirlwind. And in that moment, Amuzi's greatest warrior was smacked. The curse did not strike immediately. It waited. It watched. Days passed, and Obidike prepared for the greatest battle Amuzi had faced in seasons. Warriors sharpened their spears. Young men beat their chests with pride, and the elders blessed the fighters with palm oil and ancient prayers. But inside the forbidden cave of shadows, the witches gathered around their leader, Nsioku, who sat on a stone throne, breathing heavily, their hands raised in a chant as they moved in a slow, terrifying circle. Then their shadows merged into one. Their palms glowed like burning coal. Together, they chanted louder, their voices rising like smoke.
Let his eyes see darkness. Let his glory turn to dust. Let Obadiah fall.
Then the air crackled and a winged black mist burst out of the cave and flew toward the battlefield. By morning, the warriors of Amuzi marched out, led by Obidike himself. His armor shone like the morning sun, and even with Uli's bald head, he smiled at her lovingly before leaving. Uli held his hands. "Come back to me," she said softly.
"Always,"
he replied. But far above, unseen, the witch's curse hovered like a vulture. The battle began with loud drums and war cries that shook the trees. Obidike fought like a lion, slicing through enemy warriors with strength that made even his men proud. Then suddenly, a cold wind brushed his face. His sword slipped slightly, his heartbeat stumbled, and the world went black. Obidike staggered, blinked rapidly. Nothing. He rubbed his eyes. Darkness. He looked up toward the sun. Still darkness. Panic surged through him as he swung blindly, his enemies advancing like shadows from a nightmare.
I cannot see!
He screamed. His men froze in shock. That scream was all the enemies needed. Arrows flew, spears rained, warriors fell like trees in a storm, and in that single moment, the people of Amuzi lost the battle. But Obidike, stubborn and strong as always, refused to die. Crawling through mud, blood, and broken shields, he escaped into the forest, guided only by instinct. Hours later, Obidike reached home. Uli saw him first. She screamed his name as he fell into her arms. And with a voice that broke the entire kingdom's heart, he cried,
"They took my eyes."
News reached Ezudo, the king, who summoned the Ezedibia, the powerful seer in the land. The seer entered the palace trembling, his cowries shaking in his hands. He looked at Obidike, then he looked at the sky, and he looked at the king. Then he bowed his head slowly and said,
"My king,
every calamity in the land is the work of the 7 witches of Amuzi."
The king froze. The guards gasped and only held her breath. The palace grew cold after the Ezedibia's revelation. King Ezudo rose slowly from his throne, his hands trembling.
If the witches want to destroy Amuzi, then Amuzi must rise against them.
Later that night, King Ezudo summoned the chiefs and the Ezedibia for an emergency meeting. They gathered in the inner palace court, torches flickering against the walls.
My loyal council, the time has come to decide our future path. Let wisdom guide our words.
The king's voice was firm but anxious.
Tell us how to stop these witches before Amuzi collapses.
Ezedibia stepped forward, rubbing the cowries in his palm.
My king, the witches will not fall by strength. They will not fall by weapons. There is only one path.
The chiefs leaned in.
speak!"
The king commanded. Ezedibia pointed toward the dark forest beyond the palace walls.
We must bury the heart of Nsioku beneath the sacred Iroko tree in the great Amuzi forest.
The chiefs gasped. The king frowned.
"Only her heart?"
"Yes," the Ezedibia replied.
The coven is tied to her. Their power flows from her essence. If her heart is buried, all the other witches will become powerless instantly.
The king's brows tightened.
And how do we overpower Nsioku long enough to take her heart? She's stronger than 7 men combined.
The Ezedibia inhaled deeply.
In a few days, the full moon will rise. On that night, a spiritual weakness will come upon all witches. Their bodies will rest, their essence will drift. It is the only time her heart can be captured.
He paused, then added,
If we miss the full moon, Amuzi is doomed.
A cold silence followed his words. Every man present understood the weight of the mission. The king rose to his feet.
Prepare! We strike on the full moon!
The moon rose round and silver, glowing like a giant's eye watching the earth. Inside their cave, the 7 witches slept deeply. Nsioku, normally alert as a snake, lay still, breathing slowly. The full moon had softened her spirit. This was the moment. Led by the Ezedibia, a small group stepped into the great Amuzi forest. 2 of Amuzi's strongest warriors, 2 elders carrying sacred calabashes, and King Ezudo himself. The forest hummed with spirits as they walked deeper. Leaves rustled, shadows moved, and all cried sharply overhead. When they finally reached the towering Iroko tree, the Ezedibia raised the staff, chanting softly. A faint glow formed in the calabash. Inside it lay the heart of Nsioku, captured through a sacred moonlight ritual. Earlier that night, while the witches slept helplessly, he lifted the calabash higher.
Amuzi,
Accept the heart of Nsioku, bind her strength, strip her power.
The wind roared, branches trembled. Then the earth cracked open at the base of the Iroko tree.
lower it!
He commanded. The elders lowered the calabash into the crack. The moment it touched the earth, the tree groaned like something ancient awakening. Then the ground sealed shut and silence fell. The Ezedibia lowered his staff.
It is done. Nsioku's power is gone, and with it, the strength of the entire coven.
Back in their cave, the witches jolted awake. One screamed, another fell to her knees. Their powers flickered like dying fire. Nsioku clutched her chest, gasping.
Something has been taken from me!
Her voice trembled for the first time in her life. The other witches cried out, feeling the same strange hollowness.
Our shadows, our essence, everything is fading.
Confusion turned to panic. Nsioku tried to rise, but her legs shook violently. Her lightning-fast reflexes were gone. Her eyes, once sharp like a hawk's, now looked dull. While the witches struggled, King Ezudo stood on the hill overlooking their cave with the warriors and the chiefs. The full moon lit their faces as the Ezedibia nodded.
Now they are powerless! Move!
The warriors charged. Their drums thundered across the valley. Torches blazed like small suns in the darkness. The binding chants filled the air as they stormed the witches' cave. The witches scrambled to their feet, but their spells died on their tongues. A simple rope thrown by a warrior wrapped around the witches at once, something impossible before that night. Nsioku tried to call lightning, but only a spark fizzled. She stared at her hands in horror. My power is gone. The other witches hissed, screamed, struggled, but it was useless. They were dragged out of the cave like criminals, their pride shattered. The procession moved toward Gidigbam, a place no one ever visited willingly. The trees there bent unnaturally, the air thick, cold, and heavy with spirits. As they approached the entrance, even the bravest warriors shivered. Nsioku spat on the ground. You think this forest will hold us? Ezedibia faced her calmly.
Your strength is gone.
The king raised the staff.
Cast them in!
The warriors pushed the witches forward. The moment their feet crossed the boundary, a strange wind swirled around them. Nsioku turned back one last time. Her eyes burned with pure hatred. Ezudo! Amuzi! You will all regret this.
No, let go of me. Help us.
Then the forest swallowed her and her coven whole. Years passed after the witches were cast into Gidigbam, and Amuzi blossomed again. But inside the palace, one silent problem refused to go away. The king's wife, Queen Akubundu, could not conceive. At first, the kingdom was patient. Then whispers began. The whispers grew into murmurs, and murmurs grew into accusations and insults. But no voice stabbed deeper than the queen mother's. One afternoon, in the full glare of maidens and guards, the queen mother confronted her sharply.
Akubundu, for how long will you keep disgracing this throne? Other women give birth like hens, yet you carry nothing.
Akubundu froze, her cheeks burned. Even the maidens lowered their eyes in pity. But the queen mother wasn't done.
If you cannot produce an heir, then at least stop walking around like a queen. An empty womb carries no crown.
The words caught her deeply. She held her breath, fighting tears. Later that evening, Akubundu returned to her chamber quietly. As soon as the door closed, her strength collapsed. She rushed to the window, buried her face in her hands, and cried until her shoulders shook violently. Her sobs echoed around the lonely room. She stared out into the night, and through the palace walls, she saw the faint outline of the forbidden forest of Gidigbam. Dark, silent, watching. The queen wiped her tears slowly. Something hardened inside her, a decision she had never imagined she could make. Her voice trembled as she whispered to herself, I must end this shame. And with that thought, Queen Akubundu made a resolve that will change the future of Amuzi forever. The palace slept peacefully, but Queen Akubundu did not. Her maidens lay curled on their mats, unaware that their queen stood silently in the shadows, fully cloaked, her eyes swollen from hours of weeping. Earlier that day, long before her mind fully accepted what she intended to do, she had quietly arranged for a horse to be tied behind the outer palace wall, away from prying eyes, just in case her desperation won. But tonight, it did. She opened her door carefully, not a sound. With each quiet step through the dim corridor, her heart pounded like a hidden drum. If anyone saw her, questions would rise. The king might even forbid her from leaving the palace, but shame had already pushed her beyond fear. She slipped past the dozen guards, crossed the courtyard, and made her way to the hidden corner behind the wall. There, waiting patiently in the moonlight, was the horse. Akubundu swallowed hard and mounted the horse quickly, then rode away. The hooves beat softly against the ground as she galloped through the silent paths, moving like a shadow fleeing from its own guilt. The cold night air slapped her face, but she kept going, eyes locked on the dark outline of the forbidden forest ahead. When she reached the edge of Gidigbam, the horse suddenly stopped, snorting nervously. Its ears twitched as if it sensed something its rider could not see. Akubundu knew she could go no further with it, so she climbed down slowly, giving the horse one final trembling pat. Go back, she whispered. The horse turned and trotted away. Now alone, she took a deep breath and stepped toward the forest. The air changed instantly. The breeze died. The crickets went silent. Even the moon seemed to dim. A strange coldness brushed her skin, almost like invisible fingers testing her fear. The entrance of the forest looked like a dark archway carved by spirits. Akubundu's breath trembled. May the gods of Amuzi forgive me, she whispered as she stepped in. Suddenly, the ground hummed softly beneath her, as if something inside the forest had awakened. Then, the wind howled from nowhere. Leaves rustled violently without moving. And then, a faint whisper, soft, eerie, familiar, drifted through the trees. Welcome, Queen of Amuzi. Akubundu froze. Her heart slammed against her chest. She was no longer alone. Something or someone had heard her, and it was coming. So you finally came. Her heart pounded as the forest whispered around her. She spun around, nothing. Then a cold breeze snaked around her waist, pulling her deeper into the forest. Who's there? She cried. A low chilling chuckle echoed through the trees. We know you're saint, Queen of Amuzi. The tone was unmistakable. It was Nsioku. Then 6 dim shapes emerged, forming a circle around her. The witches of Amuzi, gaunt, spirits touched, watching her with glowing eyes. Akubundu's breath shook as Nsioku appeared before her, hovering like a dark spirit, her face pale in the shadows. You want a child? She whispered. Akubundu nodded helplessly. Please help me. The witches hissed softly, circling closer. Nsioku smiled, thinly but dangerous. We can give you what you seek, but everything has a price. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Are you ready to fade? Queen of Amuzi. Akubundu felt the weight of the night pressing on her. The forest held its breath as Queen Akubundu whispered, Yes, I am ready. The witch's eyes brightened instantly. Nsioku dropped from the air, landing softly in front of her. A child is not a small request, she said. It bends destiny. It demands balance. Akubundu steadied herself as Nsioku continued lifting a finger. To have your own child, you must give something in return. The witches began chanting, their chants vibrating through the air. Akubundu's voice trembled. What must I give? Nsioku smiled. When the time comes, you will know. The trees darkened as if hiding the answer. Then she stepped closer. Once we help you, there is no turning back. Akubundu shivered but whispered, I accept. I accept. The witches hissed in satisfaction. Then Nsioku raised her hands. A pale glowing light formed between her palms. She pressed them gently on Akubundu's stomach. A warm shock rushed through the queen, and in that moment, the forest shook for a while, then fell silent. When Akubundu jolted awake, sitting upright so fast her head spun, her heart pounding, her breath trembled. For a moment, she didn't know if she had been dreaming or sleepwalking. Her chamber looked normal, no dirt on her feet, no torn cloak, no sign of the witches, only the faint ache in her stomach remained. Warm, strange, and unsettling. She touched the spot where Nsioku had pressed a glowing light. A soft pulse entered her touch. Akubundu gasped, pulling her hand back. Was it real? Weeks passed and Queen Akubundu's body began to change. At first, she hid it, unsure of what grew inside her. But soon, the royal physician confirmed it. The Queen of Amuzi was pregnant. The palace erupted in celebration. Drums rolled through Amuzi. Women danced. Men praised the gods. The king lifted Akubundu with tears in his eyes. Everyone was happy except the Ezedibia. From the moment the queen conceived, he had sensed something faint and unsettling around the royal household, a presence he couldn't name, a shadow he couldn't trace. As the months passed and Akubundu's stomach grew, the feeling only worsened. It called around the spirit like smoke, warning him of something that didn't belong. He could no longer stay silent. One afternoon, he walked into the palace and bowed before King Ezudo.
My king, forgive my boldness, but I must speak.
The king smiled at him until he saw the fear in Ezedibia's eyes.
Speak, wise one.
The Ezedibia swallowed hard.
I have been seeing a darkness moving through the kingdom, a shadow tied to her pregnancy. I fear.
He hesitated.
She may be carrying something not entirely human.
The king's expression changed instantly. Anger, shock, denial.
Wait. What foolishness is this? Down.
He barked.
For years I begged the gods for a child, and now that they have blessed me, you call it evil? I didn't say it is evil, my king. Only that I suspect. Suspect? until you have facts. Do not bring your lies into this palace.
The king pointed at the gate. Ezedibia lowered his head, heart heavy, and walked away. Unbeknownst to them, Queen Akubundu had been eavesdropping behind a pillar, listening to everything, and as the Ezedibia's footsteps faded, a cold realization struck her. The forest, the witches, the glowing light, and worst of all, her promise. Now she remembered. Akubundu pressed her hand to her stomach, trembling. What have I done? The queen's belly swelled beautifully, and the kingdom of Amuzi flourished more than ever. The villagers prospered, the rains fell at the right time, and festivals returned with loud drums and laughter. To the people, it was as if the unborn child already brought blessings. To Queen Akubundu, it was a reminder that something powerful was growing inside her. Then, one bright sunny afternoon, her scream tore through the palace. Labor. The midwife was summoned at once. She rushed into the queen's chamber with herbs, oils, and the confidence of a woman who had delivered half the children in Amuzi. The king, chiefs, elders, and guards gathered anxiously in the throne room, pacing, whispering, waiting for the cry of the real heir. But hours passed. No sound, no baby, only Akubundu's painful, rugged screams. The midwife tried everything she knew. Massages, herbs, chants, hot water, but the child refused to descend. Sweat drenched her, fear stiffened her movements. Finally, trembling, she ran into the throne room. My king, I have tried everything. The baby will not come. It seems something is blocking the birth. Gasps filled the hall. Ezudo shot to his feet. Without hesitation, he ordered,
Send for Ezedibia, now!
The great seer arrived swiftly, eyes sharp, staff glowing faintly. He did not greet anyone. He walked straight into the queen's chamber. He chanted, sprinkled dust, then laid his palm on the queen's stomach. The room tightened with a strange tension. Then, slowly he walked to the king. By now, his face had changed. His voice was low, almost afraid.
My king, the baby will not come unless something is given in return.
The chiefs exchanged terrified looks. The midwife's eyes widened in dread. The king stepped forward.
Given in return? What do you mean?
The Ezedibia raised his head, his expression dark, and as he opened his mouth to speak,